I'm going to give an introduction to the project using some handheld notes as a guide. And I'm going to start with an introduction, then I'm going to explain why this project is so important, and then explain a little bit of the detail of it. The background for the project comes from studies of a number of well-known economists going back through the years. The first of these is Adam Smith, who was a 17th century economist in Scotland. Karl Menger, who was an 18th century economist, again very well known, and he introduced the concept of marginal utility to economics. Ludwig von Mises, who was a 20th century economist, himself a victim of the Nazi regime, and one of the members of the Austrian group, or the Austrian school. Friedrich Hayek, who wrote a famous book called The Road to Serfdom, tying in economics with politics. And a professor by the name of Antal Fakit and his proteges. Antal Fakit brought together a historical knowledge of the gold standard, integrating the knowledge of those four economists, and introducing some new concepts to economists, advancing the ideas beyond those of Ludwig von Mises. Why do I want to do this project? Why do I want to start an alternative monetary system? Very important we understand that the dollar kills human exchange. It makes us all worse off. The dollar is unjust by multiple mechanisms. The dollar sends you off your land. It taxes you. It regulates you. It basically makes life difficult. And ultimately makes you into a servant of the state. Another reason is because I don't want digital ID. Neither do I want central bank digital currency. Most of us here acknowledge that once it gets to that stage, and it's already bad enough already in the dollar, but we do not want the system to advance to the next stage where we lose all of our freedom, as will be the case under central bank digital currency. Arguably, we have already lost it now in the dollar, and that is the reason why this project is started, not solely for evasion of the digital ID or central bank digital currency. It's also for prosperity. If the dollar depletes your capital and makes us worse off, we want to return to an age of prosperity. And freedom. Ultimately, that's what it's about. Where freedom is freedom from the state and from the interference and the plunder of the pilfering of the state. Of course, there are many other reasons, but I won't explain them now. Okay, the immediate goal for this group is to finance and to grow enough food for the people in this group. Now, a good place to start would be to look at the basic functions of a human being, or the basic economic needs of a human being. Basically food, shelter, water, and fuel, in my view. But I've narrowed it down to the area of food, even though it's not limited to food. And we do it for the people within this group as specialist producers, not as self-sufficient people who we all grow our own and produce our own things for ourselves, but no, as specialist producers. For example, person A grows the tomatoes, person B is good at producing meat, for example. Person C is actually an expert forager and can bring mushrooms and wild fruits and berries and things like that into the group. Another person might be good at preserving or baking. We each have our areas of specialty, which, as is common in economics, we know that this introduces a much greater degree of efficiency into the project. Yet it is money that enables that efficiency, and currency that enables that efficiency and specialisation to occur. The specialisation of labour, and that was highlighted by Adam Smith as early as the 17th century. I want you to think in terms of the Amish people, or the Amish people, for example, in the US, around the Pennsylvania area. where they have been able to achieve a large degree of independence from the state. However, I do not want us to think, I want to take the best aspects of the Amish, but not the aspects which limit them. Noting that they for the most part, use US dollars in their trade, but they have also achieved a large degree of independence from the state, particularly with regards to schooling, resistance to the military draft, and operate farms and agricultural facilities where they do not need any outside input of their physical daily needs. Another way to look at it is in terms of a pioneer. We are pioneering a concept which used to be common, but is no longer common. We actually are pioneers in our own environment. I also want to think in terms of community sufficiency in comparison to self-sufficiency. This is not a self-sufficient, it's not for self-sufficient individuals, but for people who wish to be interdependent with their neighbours. It's about the community, not so much about individuals. The way that this is going to happen is by starting a private bank and by starting private markets. That is a radical idea. The goal of it is to make an income in gold and silver. So where our incomes in gold and silver will enable us to have independence from the state. Remembering that it is money money and currency that brings together the economic contributions of a community of people and allows for economic coordination to occur. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about how banks work. Because the idea of what a bank actually does has more or less been totally lost in the dollar-based economy which we now find ourselves. A key concept about this is that banks liquefy credit. I'll say that again. Banks liquefy credit. Now, if that is to occur, it also means that the credit must be in existence in the first place, and there are other functions that banks do perform with regards to credit. So the idea of a bank is that the individuals within the community can deposit their savings in the form of metals into a deposit facility. That deposit facility can then be used by way of the management of the bank to make payments, to issue currency. It's not recognised that banks actually issue currency, although today it's argued that the central banks do. Banks write bills and facilitate clearing payments. That's something that I'll talk about later, but they introduce the element of credit. A bank also discounts bills by using the savings of the depositors. The pool of metallic savings that are brought into the bank and held under security can enable bills that are brought forward into the bank to be discounted for cash today, to be spent in the economy. A bank also makes loans, and it does this using the depositors of savings, not as a collective arrangement, but it facilitates and coordinates the lending of individuals as a pull to others. It can actually increase the possibilities for lending and borrowing to occur within an economic system. Most importantly, at the conceptual level, what a bank also does is it facilitates the exchange of capital for income. I'll say that again. It facilitates the exchange of capital for income. What that means is a bank is about borrowing and lending, not just about clearing of payments or allowing payments to occur. That's why this project is different from a Let's scheme, it's different from cryptocurrencies, it's different from community currencies, and it's different from other forms of alternate currencies that are currently proposed. Because a bank, those currencies cannot safely allow for borrowing and lending. Yet the borrowing and lending capability is what is critical to an economy. And it can be argued that the exchange of capital for income is one of the most important needs of a human being, of our human existence, and one of the most important transactions in an economic system. Yet these are not possible outside of the dollar, because the dollar system does allow for lending and borrowing. So by allowing for lending and borrowing, the bank introduces a concept that can actually viably replace the dollar eventually. Okay, so that's about how a bank works. The second part of it is about the market. I introduced the concept of a market maker. A market maker is an individual who buys and sells simultaneously. What that means is that they are facilitating trade. Market makers are actually more common than what you think, but a market maker buys and resells, and in this instance, that market maker will be me. I will be the first market maker in this group. I will buy goods from people who bring them into the group in order to resell them out into the group, so that people can bring in bulk produce and have it redistributed within the group. The market maker makes the markets. We're going to create our own market, and it's a private market. It's a very important concept to understand. What this vision is not about, it is not a vision to mix dollars with metal. It is not a substitute for dollars, but a complete monetary system. It is not a way to get dollars so that you can take your metal and sell it to service your dollar-based loan. Although it is possible to do that, that is not the purpose of the group. Neither is it a way to get goods for dollars from dollar-based income. For example, if you have an incoming dollars, we'll sell the dollars, we'll buy gold, then we'll use the gold to buy the tomatoes or the goods that we actually need. That is not the purpose of the group. The group is to enable the purpose is to allow buying and selling, or exchange and re-exchange, so that we can have incomes in metal, which do not need to be exchanged to dollars before we can procure our goods, in order to eliminate the dollar from our economic exchanges. There are a few limited points of contact with the dollar, and they will be explained. Okay, the next point is about bills, where bills are the game changer. A bill is simply an invoice or resulting from an order that is placed in advance, that starts with finance, or it introduces the element of finance and credit to an economic system, facilitated by the bank. In this group, yes, goods can be produced and brought to market and sold. There is no problem with that. However, the objective of it is to place orders in advance. For example, I know that I'm going to need carrots in 91 days, or I'm going to be eating carrots at some point in the future. I place an order with a grower of the carrots to produce the carrots. We then have an agreement for a future exchange which will occur at some point in future, typically 91 days, where we'll exchange the carrots for metal. By doing that, we've introduced finance, because that agreement can then be used to procure inputs to that carrot growing operation, where they otherwise would not be. It's a form of economic communication and coordination that allows for goods to be produced. The production of goods starts with the finance, not with just the physical production. First, the goods must be financed. The reason we do it with bills is because bills are cheaper. If you order something in advance, the goods will actually be produced cheaper. So if you compare, for say, a dozen eggs today, which are currently available for 3.9 grams, if they're placed on order for 91 days in advance by finance, they will actually become available at a lower price, let's say 3.5 grams. The other benefit of bills is that they can earn discount. You can actually earn interest on your money in a bank. That is a game changer. Now, discount and interest are two substantially different concepts, but they are similar in that depositors to the bank don't just leave their money in the bank. The metal that they have in the bank can actually accumulate interest in metal, and that is a game changer. It's cheaper for the buyer of the goods to place orders in advance by way of bills, and it's also certain for the grower. They know when they plant the carrots that they're going to have a buyer. All they need to do is grow them, and that's one of the lowest risk economic activities there is. But the other key aspect of this is that when you introduce bills and forward orders of goods, particularly in gold and silver, that the producer does not need any capital. Interestingly enough, that actually solves the problem of unemployment. If a person does not need capital to start a productive business, they can come off the street without any capital whatsoever and then have an income. It solves unemployment. So the fact that you can bring goods into existence without any existing capital, and by utilising the capital of existing savers, we can then introduce a high power our economic activities and give a reason for new economic activity and new production and income to occur that would otherwise not occur. So I've actually covered a fair few topics there already in that introduction, but that is the vision. We're going to start a bank, a private bank, combined with private markets, and we are going to replace the dollar.